since we advocate, we are we are also very huge in terms of advocating for the rights of all these crisis-affected countries, especially the vulnerable countries. So we are hoping at this COP that all these countries receive adequate money for adaptation and for loss and damage, because as the UN we can only do so much.
Yes.
We can only just provide immediate relief to countries who get affected by this, but what happens to them in the long term, right? So for that they need longer term money and sustainable funding so that they can make the people more resilient to these shocks.
You also mentioned that loss and damage.
Yes,
and
yes.
We see this on the human capital as well, like due to the climate change. The climate change is also affects our health.
Yes.
And this is also a very harmful for the human capital, because we are losing it.
Yes.
So what needs to be done actually? What are the actions which needs to be done immediately, like in this case?
In terms of protecting people's health.
Yes.
It's all related to getting funds and resources to these countries, right? Like for instance, as you know from the IPCC's, from the science reports by the Global Panel on Climate Change, that there will be an increasing incidence of several diseases as the climate crisis, as global temperatures soar. For instance, there'll be more frequent outbreaks of cholera. And other tropical diseases as it gets warmer across, and the countries like for instance who have now not even experienced cholera ever, like parts of US for instance, they're experiencing cholera which they've never had. They don't know how to deal with those sort of situations. So for that we need to create greater awareness. First we need to create greater awareness, and of course first thing we need to mitigate the impact of lower global emissions, right? Lower our global emissions so that we can try to keep the temperatures lower than 1.5 degrees Celsius. And then in terms of health impacts, we need to invest a lot of money in our health services. There are so many countries, vulnerable countries in the world, who do not have basic health services going. For instance, many of the poor countries, vulnerable countries,
they can't even provide for themselves even basic needs.
Basic needs. So for them, they need a lot of support to help get the infrastructure back in place. For instance, there are like countries affected by conflict for many, many years, like for instance Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Haiti. So they don't really have the skills, the resources to deal with this long term, or even not even in the short term. So that's where the UN has been stepping in, like our partners like the World Health Organization, UNICEF, all these UN agencies have been stepping in. Like for instance, you must have seen they're trying to vaccinate people against polio, and so they run all these campaigns. But in an ideal world, all the countries should be able to do that themselves, right? So and then the UN is also running out of resources because we are also challenged by the global financial situation. So we depend on donations, and we for how long will other countries be able to sustain us to do that? So we need all the rich countries, developed countries, to support the developing world, to invest money, help them, to get their resources to them, to help them strengthen their health services.